I'm going to do a quick video on probably one of my more favorite tools that I use for a lot of backcountry camping and a lot of winter camping. I do a lot of canoeing in the summer. I've had the advantage or the privilege to do some whitewater out in BC the last year or so. One of the tools that we really don't think about, but when I'm asked what if I had one tool, surprisingly, out of all the knives, axes, and saws that I do have, I actually would go with probably a machete. Up here, it's more in the, I spend a little bit more time in the Canadian Shield. We're up, say, sometimes in northern Manitoba, obviously BC at times. But here in the winter, we can get down to the minus 30s, the minus 40s, where your ability to make fire is a great skill to have. In the winter, you can probably survive a lot of different situations when you're in the backcountry with the skill or the ability to make a fire, and as well as procure a shelter. But definitely fire is going to be your primary when we look at the rule of threes, which would be warmth, keeping our core temperature up, hydration being water is secondary, and food obviously is number three. The rule of threes kind of works around 3 hours if I'm in a very cold environment, and depending on my clothing, my physical ability to keep my core, my furnace burning, to maintain that before I start getting into a hyperthermic state, or my limbs start giving up and freezing, right? So the second one obviously is hydration. In the winter we have snow up here, we can melt snow. We probably need a fire to do that. And the third one being food. So my primary focus in the winter for sure is definitely the ability to make fire. So tools definitely help us with that. And my favorite tool has been for many years, and probably a good 30 years, has been the machete. And it's something we don't normally think about. When I speak to people about it, we think of it more as something that we would use in more of a southern or a jungle environment, maybe, and for clearing small brush or foliage. But it has a very effective ability up here, and I've used them for many years. So I'll kind of touch a few things about it, and I'm going to do some comparisons hopefully in this video and I'm going to use more of these I consider one-handed tools. I'm going to do a quick comparison with hatchets and axes. I'm not going to use a long-handled axe. I'm going to go into what I would consider some of the better axes, or in this case this is more of a custom hawk. It's very effective. It's got a very narrow grind, so it does dig deep. I maintain the edges so they're shaving sharp, so I can do a feather stick with it, etc., etc. But a very effective tool as well. So the comparison I'm going to try and do is I'm going to use a single-handed more hatchet hawk. I've got a couple of those here, and I might use, this is more of a small forest axe. This is a Wetterlings, but there's a Grans 4 over there. And I'll use this, which can actually be used as a two-handed. But it'll give you a good idea of a good comparison of what the capabilities are. So that aside, I'm going to talk a little bit about the machetes that I use. Over the years, the Tramontinas out of Brazil, Tramontina, have been something that were fairly cheap in the day, $5, $13, and I've got probably quite a few of these, and they were very effective at cutting and chopping, surprisingly. They dig deep. These ones are a little narrower. These are both Tramontinas. This is a little bit longer. This is an 18-inch. These are the Ontario knife version. This one is a beaver tail, and it's a, I don't know if they still make it. It is absolutely an awesome little machete. These two are kind of fall into the 12-inch range for blade length. With a machete, as a lot of axes, and not necessarily those ones, I'll do a bit of a regrind. I do like them very sharp. I like to maintain my edges. My first 2 inches I'll almost pull down into almost a Scandi grind to keep it very sharp, so I can use it for feather sticks for the most part, but it can do some notching, etc., etc. with it. My main working area, I'll maintain the edge and try and keep it very sharp, and the forward end a little bit more dull, right? Or not dull, but I'll pull it into a shallower angle. And this end I usually use for digging, right? So it'll end up in latrine duty. If I've got a trench, sometimes we've had a heavy rainfall in the summer, and I've got to get some drainage, and sometimes you got to take out a couple of roots. I'll definitely use it for that as well. The amount of real estate that I have with a machete for the cutting end, and that finding that sweet spot where it cuts very deep, I've got a bigger space with that. Whereas, you know, the axe as such, you know, it's got a much smaller end of real estate. So the accuracy with this versus the machete, you know, you have to spend a little bit more time with that. There still is accuracy as with any tool, and definitely the machete or the axe. If I can get people to focus on their accuracy primarily first, and then move up into some power and getting a bit of a snap in the wrist. So accuracy definitely over power up front, with the thought in mind that if every second chop isn't where I want it, I can actually be doubling the amount of effort that I'm putting into procuring that piece of wood or making that cut. So focusing on the accuracy is something that I try to promote a little bit more so before you move up to getting some speed and power behind it. It's I do consider these multi-use tools in a lot of ways. As I said, I can dig with them. You know, I can do my feather sticks, which I can with those axes as well, right? I can work it, but I've got a smaller part of real estate, you know, with the axe head, as well as maintaining that the edge and the grind with it. With the machetes, you know, like I said, I do more of a Scandi grind here. I keep this sharp and this little bit more rounded off for digging. But I also do grind a 90 on the spine, so it's a nice sharp edge on the spine for striking a ferrule rod. Works really well for that. The other use that I've really come into in the winter is if I've got a heavy snowpack or a wind-blown snow base, I can actually use this as a snow knife or a snow saw to cut blocks out and to use as a windbreak or a windshield, or, you know, and if I need to, you know, make a shelter out of it, that also, you know, supports that. So it's one of the tools that it does very, very well when I'm cutting snow blocks or sizing them up and cleaning them up so they fit well together. The machete, I really actually prefer it over some of my snow knives and snow saws. It's a very effective tool that way. So I'm going to get into a couple of videos and just try and do some comparisons with some of the clips to give you an idea of what the capabilities are and then sometimes how I use it. Primarily, which I won't give up here, and because of the requirement in the cold to make a fire, I won't give up the ability to procure wood if I'm chopping. When I'm felling a tree or standing dead, the machete very much excels at limbing. It's very quick to limb. So if I'm dropping a tree and I'm dropping the boughs for an insulation base, it's very quick. It will, as you'll see, keep up with any of these axes without a problem. It also will do, you know, if I have to break up into some kindling, I have to do some splitting with it, so I may baton with it. It will do that, right, to get into the dry stuff, so I can get a fire started and do my feather sticks, etc., as well as being able to strike the ferro rod. One of the weaker spots of this is of a machete is going to be batoning or splitting wood, like a larger working blade that's a little bit thicker. The Onterios actually don't do bad at it. They're a little thicker than the Tramontina, and it actually, I haven't had a whole lot of problems splitting wood with the Onterios, to be honest. They've done fairly well, especially when it comes into breaking down the kindling size. You know, I've had really good luck with these. The Tramontina, on the other hand, I will say, if I get beyond an inch and a half trying to split, you know, it's notorious. You know, I'll get a little bit carried away with it, and it takes me 10 minutes because it just jams in the wood, right, and it sucks right in. So it doesn't do well. The Tramontinas don't do well for the splitting. That's not where their advantages. They do well, very well in cutting deep, chopping. They will work. The Onterios probably have a little bit more of an advantage as far as batoning through splitting wood, but it's still not its strength compared to its chopping ability. So anyway, I'll break into some clicks here and hope this was helpful.
Very nice.
So yeah, I didn't take one good slap in the back.
Yeah. So the machete was by far as efficient as the axe.
In this case, yeah, I think there's a place the axe on bigger stuff.
Yeah.
Is gonna, but like we did the other day, we went through a 10-12 inch piece. We can do it, right?
Yeah.
And if we're doing a long fire,
the 10 minutes it takes you to go through.
Tree, I limit, right? And then I make 2 cuts for 3 pieces.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't feel undergunned with this, but with the large stuff, we're 12, we get some bigger stuff here.
Yeah.
And the axe is definitely going to have the advantage. But you can do it with a good knife or machete, like a big.
And I have to say, my preference is a machete. I probably wouldn't be going after the bigger trees, just because, like as we've said over and over, the axe just has a...
It's a lot of risk.
Yeah.
You got to be so careful. Think about everything you're doing with it, right? Because
yeah.
you lose control over it, as we see.
So can you come up?
Yeah, try it. It's going to be, to chip it out, but you can try it. And yeah, there you go. And then keep working that.
That was a big one.
A little bit of a snap in your wrist, try that. And just, accuracy before. Yeah, there you go, nice and deep. Try throwing it into it a bit.
Oops.
Yeah. It's hard with those gloves to keep that handle square, I think, sometimes, eh? You want to try the mitts. Try that. I don't know if that's any better, but
I think it's just about ready to go.
yeah, just a couple more.
Right there.
Yeah, work the edges.
Good or not.
Yeah, good job, Deb. Yeah, just
There.
yeah, it's lots of good bells for the.
It is.
Okay, so
my
now if
job
you
is
okay, yeah, no, it's not. Okay, so you've got some boughs underneath, right? So usually I'll roll it over towards you, maybe, because then they're on the safe side. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and just kind of nip them without nipping a rock. There you go. Good job. Awesome, Deb. So yeah, versus the saw, I mean, the saw would have worked, but limbing it, I mean, it's so much quicker, right? And if you're dropping boughs, right, because you want the insulation, right? So you're going to drop it on the bottom. You know, you can strip a tree pretty quick with a big knife or a machete, right?
Yeah.
You know, axe, you know, for sure we can use an axe, but a lot less real estate, a lot more accuracy,
Yeah,
and
I
a lot more
personally
risk.
wouldn't fell a tree with an axe.
Yeah, and it's got some risk if you haven't spent time with it, as we know yesterday, you know, kind of when you threw your branch at me. So, yeah, no, so you got to be careful, right? And especially when you get fatigued, right? So
Yeah.
no, awesome job, Deb.
Yeah. And that was a nice size to go through with the knife.
A machete will live on that size, you know, 3 to 4 inches, 5 inches even. But I mean, you know, that 3 to 4 inches and under, you know, a machete really, right? Like that beaver tail or one of the bigger ones, you know, goes through like butter, right? Like you have a hard time keeping up with a saw to a machete once you're using it, right? So
because so I had sawed a log down over there, and I did get tired, and I did have to take a couple of breaks.
Yeah.
I didn't really get fatigued.
No, you're taking your time. You're thinking about what you're doing, and you know that's what it's about, right? So you know, spend time with it, and you know, the more time you spend with that, you'll be really, really. I mean, that was nice and clean, and you took your time.
Yeah.
But you know.
And most of my cuts were pretty odd.
Yeah, they were, right, and And that's it, right? Accuracy over power.
Yeah.
Because you're putting a lot of power. It's wasted energy if it's not an accurate cut, right?
Exactly.
So
yes.
the fatigue, really spend the time with your accuracy and build up,
Yeah.
some speed and power as you get comfortable, right?
Yeah.
So excellent. So there you go. Right. So when you stand up beside it, before you crunched it down, so that's it, right? So it was up to your waist.
Yeah.
And now and that's what you would want for insulation. Like, and people think, I get, 6 inches. It'll work itself into the snow so quick, right? So put some bigger branches or logs down, put that on top. It won't work itself into the snow, but that's how much insulation you need, right? It's not 6 inches.
Not only does it compress into the snow, it compresses down.
Right. So you need, kind of waist height, right? So, yeah. And that's, that was, it's kind of a good idea, actually. Get this cleaned off. Gives you kind of a good idea on how much you actually need. So how quick can you limb, right? When you think about a tool, right?
Oh, yeah.
So your saw, you could do that in a long time, right?
Long time.
A longer, the machete idea, right? That 12-inch machete.
Absolutely.
Pretty effective, right? Because...
But with that being said, a belt knife too.
Yeah, well, a good belt knife that you can be quick with it. I've used that little one of, that little Kuko to, it's pretty quick once you get used to it, right? So, but a machete is just, that idea, right?
Oh, yeah.
Super quick. And and even I can get people that haven't used them a lot, right? And just get them, plain, but, the safety side of it, right?
Yeah.
How we limb and stuff.
Yeah.
But, how quick and how effective were you, and you've used that one once before, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, no, awesome. What do you think, Deb? Not so bad?
It's awesome.
I think so, yeah. It's nice now.
Get a little bit of smoking.
It's not that hard to get some over there. Yeah, maybe if it's getting bigger, or the wood's getting a little bit white.